Hello and welcome to episode 63 of the HaskinCast Podcast. For those of you that are keeping track of the episode numbers, it's really weird, unless you just want to make sure that you've heard them all, which would be absolutely fantastic. Welcome to the show. This is the last show before the August break, even though we're now like a week into August. That actually happened because Carla's episode, this episode that you're about to hear, the interview went so long that I split it into two parts. Otherwise, I'd be on my break already. I will be popping in most likely in a couple of weeks with a review of Audionamics Extracts Stems 2. The new version just came out. Ellie was kind enough to send me a link to check it out, and I have. And so far, it is really, really fantastic. I love it. It does take a little bit of finessing because every recording is different. Every EQ is different. Every focus in the mix is different. So it's really going to be dependent on what it is splitting to give you the individual three tracks, and the tracks being drums, vocals, and everything else. So I found so far that depending on how I play with it, sometimes the drums will bleed over into the vocals, but you just move the little arrow. There's like a triangle, and there's a point in the middle that you can move, and that changes the focus of how the mix is broken out. It's really simple, but it's also not really simple because it takes a little bit of playing around with it to figure out how to actually manipulate that. And like I said, it's going to be a little bit different for each song, depending on what the instruments are in the song, how it was recorded and mixed, what the EQ is. But it's actually really just easy to make the changes. It's just that when you make a change, then it has to re-export out the new stems. But you basically can just walk away. You can set it up and it'll start splitting it out, and then you walk away and you come back and you check them. And then if you're not happy with it, then you move the little dot and you see how that sounds, and you can export them again. There's a couple different modes too that I'm playing with and trying to figure out how to really learn what's the best so that when I pull in a new song and I listen to it, I can just go to whichever one I think is going to be the best. So I'll be talking about that in the review. But so far, guys, seriously, this technology is absolutely amazing. Audionamics has really simplified the user end of it as much as possible. And I didn't really play with the original version. I just started with the new updated version 2. And I just can tell you this is about as simple as it's going to get for quite a while, I would imagine. But one of my friends on Instagram asked if there was a demo version of it available, and Audionamics' response was to get in contact with them. So there may be, if you want to check it out. It's like $100, I think. So, if you're looking to do any kind of remixing, or if you want to learn from the tracks, it's a great way to separate things so that you can hear the guitar solo, say, or the organ solo a little more clearly, or really get an idea of what the drummer's doing, that some of those little subtle things that might be buried, or the vocalist. And even though there's going to be a little bit of bleed from one thing to another, it's geared towards using those tracks and other things. So like if you're a remix artist or a DJ, then it's okay to have a little bit of bleed because those things are going to get buried in your mix anyway. And at least that's my opinion. But I'll be doing more of an in-depth thing and put in some samples so that you guys can hear what it can do. But it's really amazing. So I've been playing with that in the midst of building my new website, which is now live, and it's still at the same place, https://www.scotthaskin.com with all the proper slashes and colons and whatnot. It is still in the works. It is under construction, as the homepage will tell you. Interestingly, now this show is hosted through Podbean, and interestingly, the Podbean player does not play well with WordPress, which is what my new site is under. So the Podbean player is currently not available on my website. However, I do have all the links to where you can enjoy the show, YouTube, iTunes, Podbean, Google Play, Spotify, all that good stuff. But it's just ironic. So I followed the instructions on how to set up the workaround link, and it worked for like 2 seconds and then it stopped working. So that will be back at some point as I have time. The website's functional. It's not exactly what I want, but it is up and running, and I will be making improvements to it as I can. The more important thing, obviously, is the art itself, whether it be the podcast or music or books. I am finishing up this week the writing sessions for the Last Haunted Holidays album, and I'll be recording and mixing that this month, which is part of the reason for my hiatus from the podcast. Also, I've been doing them every week, so it does take a lot of time to schedule guests, to do the all the background work that it takes to make the show happen. I've got some really exciting people lined up for when I return in September, which will probably be after Labor Day, where I will actually, that weekend, will be recording my first remote podcast. So that should be interesting. I've just purchased a Tascam handheld recorder and a ridiculously large SIM card so that I can record for hours and then edit down from there. So it should be interesting. More on that when I return after Labor Day. That may be the first episode. I'm not sure. We'll see. But in the meantime, I do want to get back to the second half of my interview with Carla. We pick up where we left off, where we were about to talk about her work as a bass player. She plays bass with the band Element 115, which I had Michael on a couple months back, and talks a little bit about that. And then the conversation kind of took an unexpected turn. And I hope that you enjoy that as much as I enjoyed speaking with her about it. And without further ado, here's Carla. It's different as a musician. And before we wrap up, this is the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, because you're not just a really warm-hearted, cat-loving, incredibly talented artist. You're pretty much a badass bass player and singer, too.
Well, thank you very much.
I have had the pleasure of seeing you perform live a few times. And of course, I listened to the stuff that you've done on record. And being somebody who's a very novice bass player, I have the utmost respect for people who can play bass. It is a much more difficult instrument than bass players make it look. And
that's true.
And it's so intricate and so important. The timing of it, the feel of it. There's so many things that go into it. Do you obviously enjoy playing live, but do you enjoy the writing process?
When I'm inspired to write, I do, but that doesn't really happen for me that often. I'm not sure what that's about. I think the last time that we were actually engaged in writing an album, there was just so much happening in life, and just the insanity of it all. It's like we have this friend, his name is Mike, and another friend, and the joke is that, like, no struggle, no song, right? And so I kind of got into that mindset during that time when we were writing our last album, and our first album, I guess I should call it, because it hasn't been the last. But anyway.
Now this is with Element 115.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it was, life was just so insane that I just found it conducive to be more in that kind of poetry creative space as opposed to visually creative space. But I haven't been in that space for a while. I've been in more of not lyrically creative, but actually I've been doing some things on the piano, and I don't do it to play publicly. This is stuff that just, I feel like it's a gift from God. It's like with the artwork or with anything else. It's like I'm just the vessel for the thing. And so I love being able to just kind of create at the piano and just play the songs, because it's kind of just such a different thing for me than playing bass. Bass,
right?
I love playing bass, and I think I love playing bass more than I love writing stuff for bass, though. Really.
Okay, that's okay.
And I don't know why necessarily. I just don't really have the opportunity, I guess, or I don't make the opportunity for myself to just sit down in that writing creative space as much as I used to.
Well, bass isn't generally an instrument that women tend to gravitate towards. What was it that kind of got you going in the first place?
Well, way back in the day, as they say, when I was back in grade school, and that time when they first start introducing kids to music, and you're supposed to pick your instrument. So it's like, okay, pick an instrument that you want to play. Well, I wanted to play drums.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents said, no.
I can identify with that. Yeah.
You're not, I know, right? You're not going to be playing drums. And don't get me wrong, my parents are the reason that I play music. My parents were madly talented musicians and have blessed my entire family with that downline. Mm-hmm. But they weren't going to, have me being a drummer. They're like, no, you need to learn something that has a little more to it than just that. They wanted me to learn how to read music, and they wanted me to learn how to play piano so that I could work the treble clef and the bass clef sides of my brains and multitask. They wanted me to really get that bigger grasp of the musical picture before I then rolled into playing drums or anything else. And I get that now as an adult, but as a kid, I didn't like to answer too much. But I didn't really start leaning towards the bass until I was out of school, because I was so engaged with just that's what I had to do. I didn't have extra time and didn't take the extra time at that point in my life because I was busy, doing other girly stuff, whatever, who knows. But unlike my brothers, I wasn't super focused on being in a band at that time in my life. And I have to say that probably, in some ways, both of my brothers have influenced me a lot in that way, because they both play multiple instruments, have been in bands for as long as I can remember, and still to this day, both still play. And my oldest brother, one of the instruments that he chose to play was bass. And I've always loved the rhythm section, drums, bass, any kind of percussion. There's just something so primal about that. I think that goes back to the very core kind of who we are as humans, kind of like, just like being around a campfire. There's just something so basic to our very being about that kind of thing. And I love being able to just be a part of that whole rhythm and the funk, that you can create in the beat and the rhythm, and just getting people moving,
Right.
Because if you can get people moving and get their bodies moving and anything like that, it can help you shift your whole perspective or your energy or anything like that, And so that's one of the reasons I love the bass and wanted to focus on the bass, because that full rhythm section dynamic, and I just love the funkiness of it. And I don't know, and maybe there was a part of me too that because at that time there wasn't a lot of women that were playing bass, and so I was like, well, why not? I'll be different and I'll play bass.
Exactly, and I love that, and it's such a grounding instrument too, because it's rooted in those, those deeper tones, and it just, you kind of feel like you have a bigger foundation under you when you're playing. Right.
I love how that resonates in my cavity. It's like you hit some of those strings. Sometimes it's like, oh yeah, you just really feel it. Now I'm not an electric guitar player, so I don't know. I'm sure that they have their moments when it's like that as well. But yeah, it's something about that. It's all about that bass,
That's right. Well, and I can identify, I like the direction that your parents wanted to take you. I think that was a good idea. And I can identify with that because when I was younger and I would take my drums over to my grandfather's house when I would stay with him, for a few days over Christmas break, and he would want me to play along with Benny Goodman records. And I'm like, yeah, but I just found this Deep Purple album that I'm learning. I don't really care about your swing music, Grandpa. That's, that's right. This is, I don't really care about World War I and, all those things. Right. And I wish to God I would have listened to him. I could have grown so much faster as a drummer had I really learned those skills. And to this day, I can't play swing very well. And I think it's now because I feel so bad that I just won't let myself do it.
That's funny.
Well, it is now.
I know you can. Yeah. I know you can because I know you've got the skills. But it's interesting that you grew up with that too, because my folks, man, in our house there was music very often, and big band music, Benny Goodman, and back in the day, man, that was their thing. And so I feel super blessed that I was exposed to that at a really young age.
Yeah, well, I guess I didn't know this until after my grandfather died, but he used to play during World War II. He used to play drums in the officers' clubs.
No kidding.
And my great uncle Richie apparently was friends with Benny Goodman, and whenever he would come to Ohio, they would get together and jam.
Yeah. See, back in the day, they did stuff like that, those bands. It was so cool.
Yeah.
I love that.
Before it was all commercial and you're not allowed to play with this artist because they're on this label and you're on that label.
Exactly.
I've had friends that have had to, they've recorded sessions and then the record company won't let them release it because their artist is on a different label. I'm like, this is all so stupid. It's that same mentality of you're not allowed to stand on this piece of dirt. You're only allowed to stand on that piece of dirt. It's,
right.
It's dirt.
It's dirt.
Yeah.
And you didn't create it. So piss off.
Exactly.
Yeah, boy, just you go down that rabbit hole of the whole music industry, which, we just dabbled in that long enough for me to realize that it's probably not a world I want to spend a lot of time in, like full in.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely not, because, and this is no offense to anybody that's in the industry, but, before you realize it, you're pretty much sucked into a world that is just insanity and it's totally out of your control. You could create the best music in the world and it can be just super awesome and it gets sucked into the black hole of politics or red tape and control by those who run this kind of thing. And, it's like, if you don't follow the formula and if you don't play the game, basically, the old saying, sell your soul, you don't get to play with the big boys. And frankly, I'm grateful, at this point in my life that we didn't continue down that road any further, because there are bigger and better things to do musically and otherwise that we can still be musicians and affect change in the world and not, do stuff that just is not who we are as people.
Right. And I think as is keeping with that honesty, I think that your brand has to really represent who you are. And if you're doing something to specifically say, this is how we're going to cut through and we'll get to our own stuff later, that really doesn't work a lot. I think Madonna really is one of the few people that really knew how to work that. She did the things that she needed to do to get to that height. And then she said, okay, now I can do the stuff I really want to do because I don't need to be the, that persona of what people think of me anymore. And when I need to be, then I'll do it. But I can just be me for a while.
Yeah, exactly right. And, I don't think it's that undifferent necessarily in some respects in the art world as well.
Yeah.
And I think there was an innate knowing in me as a young person when I first started contemplating artwork and just kind of that whole thing. People said, well, you're going to have to go to New York or Chicago or LA or whatever. And I even recently, in the last several years, I've had an acquaintance that's just been hammering me to, you got to be in LA, you got to move to LA, you got to be here. I can't do stuff for you if you're not here. I'm like, no, not happening.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I think it really comes down to what do you want as an artist? What do you want your life to be? Do you want to be somebody who is, churning out things because you're told to by your manager? Or do you want to be somebody who's just like, when I feel like painting, I'm going to paint and I'm going to paint what I feel like painting. I'm not working under, but sometimes, like we said earlier, it is good to have projects because they push us a little bit more than we would push ourselves.
Right.
And I can appreciate that. I think I've done some of my best work when I've done like under the gun auditions and things like that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But at the same point, I'm more proud, I think, of the songs that I create that I kind of do in my own time because I put, it's not that I put more of myself into them. It's that I take the time to be delicate and make more conscious decisions instead of just go off of raw. Okay, I've got 6 hours and I still have to record and mix this yet. So,
Right. There is that reality. Yeah.
Yeah. It's tough either way. I think both things have their advantages, but I would prefer in the overall to just write and enjoy what I want to write and enjoy. And I think if I enjoy it, there's a chance that at least someone else will.
Right, exactly. And I think, most creative people, strive for that ultimately. But I guess, I'm at this point looking for a balance between the two because, I'm not an independently wealthy woman by any stretch of the imagination. And so, people are like, oh, you live in Sedona? And it's like, yeah, I live in the full pie side town. I'm like, seriously, starving artist level here. There's like the level of people like us that are, the people that are the behind the scenes artists and artisans and whatnot. And then there's like those that have the super rich money, but they live on the other side of town, not where I'm at, So there's, again, that perception, it's like, oh, well, I also with the perception thing, just if I could for a moment, people have that automatic perception that, oh, you're an artist, you live in Sedona, there's no way I'd be able to afford your art. It's like, no, seriously, just get over yourself. There's so much competition here that sometimes I can't even do certain things because I can't do it as inexpensively as someone else. So, again, it kind of is. I had someone tell me in one of the local shops one day, we were having this conversation about pricing and, what kind of pieces are they looking for? Because one of the things, you have to take into consideration as an artist is, well, is there already an oversaturation of type of artwork that I do, whether it's subject matter or style or whatever. And so she was saying, as far as pricing on things, she said, really what it boils down to is if someone sees what you do and they fall in love with it, they're going to find a way to make it happen because they love it.
Right.
And she said, so don't get all caught up on the pricing thing. Now that's hard not to do, when you're trying to make a living, but also like there is this side of me that wants to just pretty much donate my whole life as a volunteer and just do what I do for free because I love it and all of that. People are like, no, you have to still pay your bills.
Right. Well, I mean, you do have to eat,
Right.
The cat can't get all the cheese.
Right.
I have to wonder what the equivalent is in the art world where, people are so used to now streaming music and not really paying for the music itself. I have to wonder what the art equivalent is of that. Is it that they can download a picture, send it to Vistaprint, get a canvas made and, for $20 or just put it as a backdrop on their computer screen?
Yes, there is a ton of that because anybody that knows anything about, computers in any way is probably smart and savvy enough to do something like that. And, truly with the photography thing, it's the same, with the phones, like you were saying, everybody's a photographer now because these phones are amazing. They take amazing pictures. And so you can download your picture to your computer. You could probably just directly send it to, fill in your blank printing place and have it printed out. And that is a consideration. I understand, because, I'd like to be able to spend a lot of money on other people's art. There are things that I genuinely come across sometimes that I would be like, yeah, I would like to invest in that person because I think they've got a lot of talent. I particularly love this piece or whatever,
sure,
but may not be able to afford it, so there is a lot of that. It's becoming more and more difficult, I think, for musicians and artists. We experience that with our music as well,
Yeah.
You just don't make money at it like you used to.
Yeah, very true. And I mean, unless you're going to go on tour, and even a lot of the tours are breaking even at best.
Oh my gosh, we did the tour thing, and I mean, I think if we broke even, I would have been excited. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Because there's always something that you don't expect. I mean, the joke for us with the Element 115 days was like we would start out on a road trip and we'd get 30 miles. 60 miles, however many miles from Phoenix or whatever, and something inevitably would go wrong with the truck or the trailer in which we were carrying our gear, or whatever. And so, I mean, 10 years down the road, it's funny now when we talk about those adventures because we're not caught up in them and that you remember the good times and not all the trauma. But
right, yeah.
When you're caught up in that stuff, and it's like, seriously, we were going to Roswell one year. We were the headliner that year. And we were driving literally all night long to get there. We had 2 blown tires. I mean, it was raining. I mean, everything that could go wrong, it felt like was going wrong, right? And so we pull in and we had to spend the entire night setting up for the following night's show. And it was just like, again, one of those things where people think, oh, you're a touring musician or you get to play music. That's so awesome. And it's like, yes, it is a huge, huge blessing. And I hope I get to do it until the day I die. And I am so, so grateful for the opportunity. But overall, the time spent on stage being the quote unquote rock and roll star or worship leader or fill in the blank musician, is so minimal compared to all the work behind the scenes. Like, can you say roadie and travel time and practice time and just, all of that people don't take into consideration, because we weren't the kind of band that we could hire people to be our roadies. We had people that would sometimes volunteer, and that was super cool, like you.
Right. Yeah, I remember that.
I remember you being at a couple of our gigs, and we were always so grateful. But, basically we were the roadies and the set crew and the teardown crew. Oh, and then, somewhere in there, you get to play music and connect with the people.
Yeah.
And that's the awesomeness, when you get to connect with the people through your music, through your art, through poetry, whatever it is, when you touch someone's heart or soul in that way.
Yeah.
And it's just, there is nothing better.
Very true. And especially, in the world of a composer where I live, and I don't really play live a lot anymore. I don't really get to see people enjoying my work. I'm lucky if I hear about it. In doing research for my book, I reached out to some people and they told me that, they love my music, or they put, they give it to their kids every night to go to sleep with. And I would have never known those things, because people really don't take the time to go out of their way to tell you.
True.
And unless you're in a venue where you see people seeing you and you see them tapping their foot or bobbing their head or whatever, you don't really know. You don't get the opportunities like we used to. And it's a shame, because we live in a world now where communication is the easiest thing in the world.
Yep. And yet, like you were saying, we really don't take advantage of it in that way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, how quick can you reach out in a text or an email or Facebook or fill in the blank social media thing these days,
Yeah, exactly.
But the thing with that is that, and this is an honest to God true story, there have been so many times where I have gone to log on to my, Facebook page, and it'll be to send you a message or read a message that you have sent to me. And I'll get on there and I get distracted instead of staying focused and just going to do the business at hand.
Mm-hmm.
I get sucked into it, and then an hour will go by and I'll forget why I'm there. I'll log off, go start dinner or whatever. And it's like, oh crap.
Oh yeah.
I forgot to do the thing that I went there to do. It's like, I think that as much as humans, we want to believe that all of that stuff is making us more connected. It's really not. It's messing with our heads and making us less connected overall.
Yeah, it's become a very big distraction. And I see that meme every once in a while where it says, the internet used to be the distraction from the real world, and now the real world is a distraction from the internet. And that may sound cliche, but that really is true. And one of the things that I love about living in Vegas is we have a lot of parks. And they're very well maintained by the state, and there's tons of them, and some of them are really big. And I love seeing people at the park, because it means that they're not. I mean, a lot of them are sitting there on their cell phones, but they're outside getting fresh air. And
right.
A lot of them are interacting with other people, and it's not just let's do a simulation of what it would be like if we went to a park.
Right, exactly. And that's another funny thing. And another true story. My nephew, bless his heart, my brothers, they're both older than me, and they're very avid mountaineers, climbing, hiking, the whole 9 yards. And I mean, like, serious, up over 40 miles of mountain range type climbing and stuff. So anyway, my nephew one year came out to go with them. And when he got back from his trip, of course, he was super excited and fired up and wanted to share with his friend at work about his adventures or whatever. And his friend says to him something to the effect of, "Why did you do that? I could sit on my couch and do that at home." On a virtual, reality thing. I'm like, "Oh, dude, you have no clue what you're saying. Unplug and go stand outside. Please, for the love of God, go get connected."
Yeah.
Because it's in those places where you realize, like, seriously, go spend some time in nature.
Right.
If it's a park or whatever, but like it's so important.
If you walk along the shore of the ocean, or if you walk through a forest, or just in like a lush field, there is nothing in the world that a computer can do that will give you that feeling. And that is some of the greatest stuff this world has to offer, I think.
Exactly. And that's why we're here. I mean, that's what humanity is supposed to be about. We're not supposed to be about, turning into machines and becoming more board-like.
Right.
That's not what humanity and the whole thing with humanity is about. And so, I do have, as you know, a certain level of concern for the future in that regard. I mean, that's another reason I do the work that I do, because I want people to be so taken back by it that it reminds them, wow, that could be something I see right outside my door, or that was a flower that was in your garden, or, oh my gosh, that's what, my pet looked like when he was 10, or, you know what I mean? It's like we forget just how amazing the world is that we live in. That's why in my photography, especially, and a lot of my earlier artwork, I focused on little details in nature where sometimes you didn't even know what the thing was. You just knew it was this cool looking thing, but it would engage someone to the point where at least it made them stop and look.
Yeah. And that's hard to do these days.
It so is hard to do these days. It makes my heart sad, And as an artist, that's part of our responsibility is to visually create something or musically, spiritually create something that makes someone stop and it touches their heart to a point where you know that you've had an effect on them in some way. And, just like with you, because you're not out playing in the public, and we play in public, but not in the same level or in the same way that we used to, certainly. We still have effect on people, but there's oftentimes the things that you do that are the little things, a little piece of something that you share with someone that you'll never know the difference that it makes in someone's life.
That's very true. I think we affect people in ways that we will never know because either people don't know how to express it, or they're afraid to express it, or they get distracted and don't express it. But I have people tell me from time to time how much of a difference I make in their life. And I take that so much to heart because they cut through all of that and took the time to tell me. And if I'm doing something right, I want to know. If I'm doing something wrong, I want to know. But it's important to tell people that, they mean something to you, and that you've had a positive effect on them, and then they can, butterfly effect that and send that same feeling to others. If they don't know they're doing it, they might not think it's that what they're offering has value.
Exactly right. And, I'm sitting here and I'm saying this is, exactly right or whatever. You know me long enough that this is conversations that we've had for years, and you are that champion in the world. That's how I see you. I don't even know how to put it any other way, because you have chosen to overcome circumstances that would give you reason not to have the attitude that you have, perhaps. And to, you could easily choose to focus on negative stuff like we all can. And you and I've had conversations about these before, but, it really is that conscious choice every day to wake up and focus on the good, reach out to the people who do good in the world. And you are one of those people. I see it on your postings all the time. And I've seen it and experienced it with you as a friend. And it's like the one thing that impresses me is you always say something to the effect of, well, is there something I can do for you? Or is there some way that I can help you? And that is that heart of service that I love. And I love about you, and I love about people that have that same kind of attitude that inspires me to want to then be more of that in the world, because it is like the butterfly effect that you were talking about. Right. The more we pay that forward and the more that we make those little changes in our own lives, the more we can have those effects on other people, because people look at you and they have known you for, X amount of years, and they recognize the change in you. They recognize how much you've grown and stepped into that place of ownership of just, life's a drag sometimes, but I'm going to choose to help people be successful, and I'm going to choose to look at life in a good way, and I'm going to choose to be the best person that I can be. That is you, my friend.
Well, thank you, Carla. That really means a lot to me. That's what I want to show the world. That's the whole thing. And, there's definitely people affect that, though. The people that will appreciate it are the ones that you're more likely to offer that up to. And the people that are either just going to take advantage of you, or aren't going to care, or are going to judge you or look at you as if you're crazy because you offered them something out of the norm. You really kind of just learn where to take those shots, but you tend to always be available for the people that do have amazing hearts like you do. And do appreciate those gestures. And even though I don't think you've ever once taken me up on it, you know, you
I feel like I have.
You may have, but I mean, you know that it's genuine. It's not like I'm saying that because I have an agenda like your cat does.
No.
You know,
right. Yeah. You're not after cheese. I know.
Right. It's something that's honest. Now your coffee, maybe.
Right. Well, yeah. I will admit.
Yeah. But in general, no. I mean, it's a very, I don't do it to get something out of people except their own happiness. If there's something I can do to elevate someone's happiness or their joy or take away stress that will lead them to joy, I'm generally happy to do it if I can.
Right. And that's what I love about you, because I know that you're genuine about that. And I think that most people don't really know how to interpret that, because we have been so conditioned through life experiences mostly, or, bad programming or whatever the thing is, that, we do become suspect of people that have that as their overall way of being. It's like, okay, what's the ulterior motive or whatever? Right, I know that that's not that way with you. And the reason that, honestly, we probably don't reach out more in that way is that I really, if I reach out to you in that way, it's because I know that you're genuine in that. And so if I reach out, I want it to be because I genuinely believe that you're going to be able to help me. Like, I don't want to take advantage of that. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not putting it in words, necessarily that I would want to choose, but because I know that that's who you are as a person, and I want to be that way too in my life, that, we do a lot of the work that we do. And I want to be that for people in my life as well. And so there is that certain level of pay it forward, so to speak, or just do for others, because I really believe that both Michael, my husband, and I have stepped more and more into that place as well, in terms of really getting fired up about helping other people be successful, because that's exciting.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, if I could be that excited about my own stuff, maybe, but it's, I don't know. It's just that dynamic of when you can work together and help someone else, be successful or create something awesome. Man, that's just so cool.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Oh, I love that feeling.
You mentioned something earlier about people being suspect, and I think that is definitely a component to it. I mean, how many times have you gone and held a door open for a stranger and they just give you some kind of scrunchy look like, what are you doing that for? Who does that in this world? Even when we've gone down to the basic levels of human consideration and people look at you like you're nuts for just being a decent person, when somebody offers you something outside of even that, it does get met with suspicion quite a bit. And I have had that to the point where I've even said, you know what, I'm fine. I'm just not going to do this anymore, because people are more afraid of it. They've been conditioned to be more afraid of it than accept it. And that really was a difficult thing for me to grasp. But I've tried to put it in the perspective of, just like I did with competing with other artists, everybody has come from their own experiences, whatever positive and negative influences that they've had, the things that they've seen, their thought processes, their, how many times did I have to touch the burner before I stopped touching the burner? That kind of mentality. So you can't really ever judge or compare anyone, because everybody comes into life and they are where they are in their journey based on all of their factors. And I can look at somebody and say, oh my God, how can you do that? Like, I don't understand your thought processes, or your decisions are always leading you to disaster. And that's easy for me as an outsider to say, but I don't know what all those factors were. I can't analyze why they think the way they do.
Exactly. They just do. Right. They just do.
But it does get disheartening the more you see of that, and the less you see of people like you who do appreciate a gesture like that. And it does get you to that point where you're like, you know what, I'm just going to stay in my hovel. I'm not going to go out unless I have to. And like we were saying earlier, like, I don't know how much I would leave the house if I didn't have to leave the house.
Right.
Aside from my walks, of course, but
absolutely.
But we do get to that point, and I fear that we get pushed into that more and more in this world than we are coming out of it. I think it's going to be a while before there's enough of a shift in that direction.
Yeah, I feel like on some level the shift is probably happening, but I agree with you. It's been a long time coming. And, we've had countless conversations about this type of thing, and spiritually the world is just so starved for the very kind of thing that we're talking about, just that human interaction and caring and genuine love. It's like, let's toss out all the dogma and all the other stuff and just really get down to basics. It's like, we're supposed to love one another.
Yeah.
How are we doing with that? How are we caring for each other? Are we? It doesn't seem like it too much.
But don't you think, no, we're not, at least not on a global level, but don't you think a lot of that is that sort of what's out there in society? I mean, how many things other than cat videos, how many human things do you find on YouTube that make you smile and see people doing good to each other versus, mocking people or laughing at people or these epic fail videos? And, there's so much more that's put out there that drives us to focus on that. Let's keep each other from each other than let's build together.
Exactly. And I think a lot of it is because it's easier. It's easier to do that and build those walls than to tear down our walls and really take the chance and the risk of putting ourselves out there that we might get hurt, because really that's what it boils down to, is the fear of being hurt, because we've all been hammered in that way, in our lives. If you've lived for any amount of time, you've been burned, you've been hurt, you put up those walls and it's like, I am never doing that again. And yet that's the very thing that we all need so much, is to just unplug and reconnect to humans, and I get it, man. It's hard for me. It's difficult for me, but I have such a passion about that. I really, in whatever ways I can, want to help people connect with their humanity more and with their spiritual side more. Especially living in Sedona, you have all different varieties of people, and I listen and communicate with all levels of people on their journey, spiritually speaking. But the one common thing that everybody is grasping for, in desperate need of, is more one-on-one with one another, and that knowingness that they're okay no matter where they're at on their journey. It's okay to be where they are. We just need to know that someone loves us no matter where we are. It's okay, because you know what? We're all messed up. Mm-hmm. We all have problems. We've all made mistakes. It's like you were saying, the whole judgment thing. It's like we need to kind of like step away from that and move more into, let's not make fun of each other, but let's recognize that you don't know what that person's journey has been.
Right. Yeah.
And so maybe just have a little bit of compassion for them, because you might hear their story and just be in tears by the time you're done.
Right.
Because their story might be something just so compelling that you don't know about. I hear it all the time. And I'm humbled all the time. It's like, oh my gosh, who am I to pass judgment on that person or have a snarky attitude about that person or whatever, because I don't know what their journey has been. Just like I don't want people to have that attitude about me because they don't know what my journey has been either.
Yeah.
And I've been on that receiving end too, and it ain't fun.
If you take it down to the basic level and you look at just road rage, for example, and let's say that you're driving down the freeway and somebody cuts you off to get to the exit ramp. Our immediate thing is to get angry and, shout or flip them off or, scowl or whatever it is. But but that immediate reaction that we have is taking whatever their situation is personally. They don't know who we even are. We're a car on the road. They've got to get to the exit. We don't know. So I used to do this thing, and I've kind of slipped out of it, I have to say. But I used to think, I don't know what's going on with that person. Maybe they're on their way. Maybe their wife is on the way to the hospital delivering the baby, and they've got to get there. Or maybe their friend tried to commit suicide, and they're dying in the hospital, and they need to get there before that. I don't know what's happening with them. There must be a reason that they're driving like a complete idiot and putting me in danger. But we automatically go to that defensive / aggression mode without putting in that thought. And I tell you what, when I changed my perception on that, it really made driving a lot more pleasant.
Yes.
It really did. Because
I agree.
It has nothing to do with me. I just happen to be in that space. But they didn't go, oh, you know what, that little gray car, he's done. I'm just gonna cut him off because I don't like him. They've never even seen me, probably. So it's really important, that perception and then the perspective afterwards.
Yes.
And the quicker we learn, as soon as we react, the quicker we learn to identify that inappropriate reaction and turn it around, the faster we'll get to not reacting that way at all.
Absolutely right. You are absolutely nailed it. You're so correct.
Thank you. But it takes a lot of honesty. And I think that's where people tend to fail, because people don't want to see themselves as doing anything wrong. And so,
of course.
So it's not
the other guy. Come on.
Yeah, it's the other guy's fault. I wouldn't have gotten angry if it wasn't for him cutting me off. So it's always like, let's refocus that blame. Just be honest.
Exactly.
Yes, that person did something, but you also reacted the way that you reacted. So take that responsibility for your part, and then just do the best you can to turn it around. We're not perfect. It's going to take a long time to retrain our brains, but you have to start somewhere.
Right. And you know what it is just bad programming that we've received. And so if we look at our, I just gave a talk on this recently where, it's like, look at yourself as a biological computer, and what are you allowing into your system, and how are you responding to that? And if you've got bad programming, it takes a while to put in the new programming to have the new habit develop, like you were saying. And I think, honestly, for so many of us, especially that have lived in Phoenix or any big city, it becomes a survival technique. You have to change your perspective, because otherwise you just become a raving lunatic.
Right. And
you realize, that's not healthy. And it, change your perception in your life changes. What you perceive changes.
Yeah.
I can't remember who put that out. I think it was probably Wayne Dyer or someone like that. There's just the perfect way that he said it. And it's like, oh, yeah. Change your perception, and what you're perceiving changes. And oftentimes that is so, so true.
It really is. And I've done that, in the working field. I've done that with music, and, even when I've taken on projects and I'm like, God, I really wish I'd have never done it. You find little ways to shift things to make it okay and to get through it. And if you can do that, then you can do it on the larger scale with life habits.
Right.
One thing too that I found fascinating is, and I think I'm going to have to actually break this episode into two parts now, but I find it like the mob mentality or the group mentality a little bit fascinating too. And I look at, I used to be a really big fan of hockey, and growing up in Michigan, I wanted to be a goalie for the Red Wings.
Go Wings!
Yeah. But a couple of years ago, I started thinking about this, and I thought, so you've got 10 forwards and defensemen on the ice, and you have 2 goalies. So when the 10 players start fighting, why do the 2 goalies start eyeing each other? What is it? What is it in their condition that makes them want to be a part of hurting someone else? They know who each other are. Obviously, I mean, everybody they know the other players, but they've got no beef with each other. They're at opposite ends of the ice. They haven't touched. They haven't bumped into each other. Nothing has happened. But for some reason, they start eyeing each other, and then they start moving forward to see who's going to go first, who's going to take the penalty for crossing center ice, and they start fighting. But why? What is it in our brain that makes us want to do that?
It is the mob mentality. It's the kind of my team versus your team, and man, whether it's right or wrong, I'm going to defend my team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Instead of working together, like realizing that in the bigger scheme of things, we're all on the same freaking team.
Right. Yeah. We're all human beings living on the same planet trying to survive.
Oh my goodness. That just drives me crazy.
Until we really get to that point to where we're all realizing and living that journey together, I think things are only going to get better to an extent.
Yeah, I agree.
There's always going to be some element of racism or, pride, depending on what city or country you're in, or we need to do better than these people because they have it better than we do. And all that kind of stuff would go away if we just realized that one fact. But there's just too many people, and there's too much deep-seated programming for us to get there without some sort of cataclysmic event.
Right.
I don't think it will happen. And I hate that, but I don't think it will. It'll get better.
I agree.
It can get better, but it won't be 100%. There will never be a utopia, because there's always going to be somebody that will find a way to have more for themselves than everyone else.
Oh, absolutely. And that's been the dilemma for humanity since the beginning of humanity, is that, I think the original design was awesome, and we were probably designed to be happy and get along, and isn't it awesome? But once someone realizes, or whatever being realizes that, oh, hey, I can have more for me at the expense of someone else. Oh, that's a slippery slope.
Yeah. Or I don't feel good about myself, so I need to put somebody else down so I'll feel higher up.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, that's back to that fear of that I won't have enough if I give to someone else. I'm going to be lacking in some way. It's like I have to put that person down to make myself feel better. Well, what is it that you're lacking in your life? What is it that you're fearing or needing so that you wouldn't have to put that person down to make yourself feel better? Well, really, it's just that we need more love and more attention in our lives, more people that affirm to us, like you were saying earlier, that number one, we're good people, that what we're doing is awesome, and that, hey, despite your faults, you're still a stellar human being. Overall, we're all just here doing the best we can.
Right.
And that's what people forget too, is that overall, everybody's just doing the best that they can. We all kind of want the same things. There's always exceptions. There's always the jerk who wants more, or wants to be the bully, or, the woman who's going to take advantage, or whatever the thing. But overall, humans, no matter where you're from, no matter what race you are, what your, religious or theological background or whatever, we want a good place to live. We want good food and clean water. We want our kids to be safe and healthy and happy and have a chance at a good life.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be able to go out and find a decent job to make a living so that we don't have to work 3 or 4 jobs just to be broke at the end of the week.
Right.
So that somebody else can have more, or whatever, off balance thing that is. I don't know. But, it's not rocket science, and yet it feels like beyond rocket science to try to solve the problems because we've gotten so far off track. We've allowed, as humanity, that darkness to take control at such a level that now we're all running around like crazy ants trying to figure out how to solve the problem that started so long ago. Because someone somewhere realized, oh, I can take advantage of someone else. Isn't that awesome? No, it's not awesome. Stop.
Right. But even within that, somebody will say, well, I have to be the one to come up with the plan, so I'm going to shoot your plan down.
Right.
So I can be the hero. And it just never ends.
Right, because my plan's better than yours.
Right. Exactly. And, I think it's really interesting. I was listening to a podcast recently with Jenna Fisher, who is an actress who is known best for being Pam Beesly on The Office. And she wrote a book called The Actor's Life, a Survival Guide. And anybody who is an actor, director, even a musician, or just a fan of entertainment, it's a great book for them to read, but it really is a great survival guide. And she was saying that, a lot of the attitude, especially in Hollywood, is that there's not enough roles for the number of people that are trying to get them. And it really is like, I shouldn't tell my roommate about this audition because I don't want them to go in and get it because they have a similar body type or a similar comedic style or whatever. But if we all just work together and create things, there will be plenty of things for everybody to work on.
Right.
And the first person, and my own add to that is what I typically see, which, kills the utopian idea, is that the first person to go, well, yeah, but if I do this, then I can get 2 projects. It's over right there. It just ends.
Right. You do. You have to be selfless, and I know that that's difficult for all of us. It's difficult for me.
Sure.
I mean, it's that way in the art field here in Sedona. You don't get people that are like, oh, hey, yeah, I'm going to help you out. I mean, not other artists, because you're in competition with them. Yeah. I can't tell you how many people be like, oh yeah, I'm going to hook you up with this person, and I'm going to talk to this person about you. And that crap never happens because you're in competition. I mean, even if you don't do the same style of art or whatever, like you were saying, there's only so much space in XYZ gallery or shop or, town or whatever, and everybody wants a piece of it.
Yeah. But where it could work is if, the people are working together going, okay, well, we filled this gallery. Now we need to build another gallery, or we need to create another space where more of the artists can show up. So there's people that are builders. There's people that are, good at land deals. There's people that are good with money. I mean, if all of us work together, we could have all those things.
Exactly. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, or maybe I just thought that I talked to you about this earlier, but, we're like, if everybody does what they're really good at and what they love to do when we work together, you can make it be successful.
Right.
or you have a better chance of it being successful.
Right.
And, there have been those of us that have talked about that here in Sedona, artists, who aren't part of the, the people that are currently in galleries or showing or whatever. And there are madly talented people who just don't ever get that opportunity for whatever reasons. It costs money and competition and whatever. And so, there are a lot of us who've talked about having like the pop-up art shows or the, random gallery, showing at somebody's house, or trying to find different ways, like that, where we can work together as artists to make it easier for all of us. But you always do have that faction that's like, oh no, because that's taking money out of my pocket and we are not going to let you do that.
Right.
We are going to keep a control on this thing. And that's unfortunate, but I don't know what the answer to that is. I know that for each and every one of us, for anybody who pays attention or has even half a brain or half a heart, can recognize that, there's a lot of stuff that needs to change. And it really does come back down to the simple fact that what can I do in my life right now where I'm at to get started, to make a difference? Smile more often, say hi to somebody at the post office, like you said, let them in line if they're in a hurry in their car. Like, does it really matter that you're ahead of them by one car?
Right. Yeah.
No, it doesn't. It's in the scheme of life, it's not going to make that difference for you, but it might for them. Mm-hmm. Like you were saying, maybe they're on their way to the hospital because, XYZ accident just happened. Or like you were saying, you just don't know other people's life situations. And so if we could just approach our day every day with just that in mind, like, what can I do for me to be better and be a more positive influence on somebody else?
Yeah.
What can I do to help someone else?
And I think that's the key to the world. If we all have that attitude, unless we're all just standing there looking at each other going, I don't know.
Right. We're all waiting for somebody else to do it. And guess what? Like, I've been hearing this for years. It's like, oh, well, XYZ, alien are going to save us, or God's going to save us, or say that somebody's going to save us. It's like, we are going to save ourselves. I get tired of the people that say, well, why doesn't, God come in and save us? Or why doesn't, XYZ spiritual person, if they're that powerful, why don't they come in and just change it all? Because if they're omniscient creator, all creative life force, then they should be able to do that, right? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But they're not that all creative, omniscient, power, creative, being thing that you're talking about didn't mess it up. We did.
Yeah.
And so it's up to us to fix it, because if we don't realize that we're the ones that have to fix it, we're always going to be the ones that mess it up. Because if somebody else comes in and fixes your life, isn't it more likely that you're going to do it again, mess up again? Isn't it when we step in and fix ourselves that we, realize, number one, that we can do it and that it is our responsibility, and you're less likely to then make that mistake again, because, oh, wow, mistakes are what make exceptional possible. We have to stop being afraid of that stuff.
If I had a party and trashed my apartment and I hired a maid to come in tomorrow and clean the place up, I'm probably going to have another party. If I have a party and trash the place and I have to clean it up, there's not going to be any more parties where that's going to happen. I think that's the thing. Unless you change, you can't just fix the problem. You have to change it. And if you don't change, then you're just going to keep doing it. As they say, history repeats. But that's really what it'll be. You'll just keep doing the same things over and over until if somebody else is coming and cleaning up your mess.
Right. And as humanity, that's pretty much what has happened, because we've been given do-overs before. Sure. I mean, let's face it. Anybody who does any research in history or spirituality or anything, theology, whatever it is, the stories are out there for people who really want to find out. Mm-hmm. And we've been given opportunities over and over and over again, but there's always that seed of greed or, one-upsmanship or whatever it is that's left behind. And then over time, man, we just cascade out of control. And so, like you said, it might take something really cataclysmic to pull us out of the stupor that we have been sold a bill of goods on. And, all you got to do is look around right now, and it's like there are earthquakes, there's volcanoes, there's weather that's out of control, there's flooding, there's, cats and dogs living together. Oh my,
Right, mass hysteria.
The bedlam, the mayhem and just everything that's going on. But when that stuff happens, what's the other side of the coin that we always see? You always see the good side of humanity come out. People that want to help. They're showing up to help their neighbors. They're sending food. They're sending clothes. They're sending money. Whatever they can do. Humans, as a rule, if left unmessed with, for the most part, we have good hearts.
Yeah.
We want to help. We just don't know how.
But I think a lot of people, too, in this distracted world just can't be bothered to help. Like, they might want to help, but what tends to happen is, oh, yeah, wow, that's horrible. Let's, all right, well, let's have dinner. And then, and then as soon as the distractions start, I think you're right. I think basically people want to be good people, but I think we've become a somewhat lazy society. And it just becomes, but we also get that way in the moment and we don't stay that way on the whole. Like when somebody passes away that you're close to, and I just lost a friend last week. And, in that moment, you're like, I want to give everybody I care about a hug. But a week later, when you're out of that shock and that depression is worn off a little bit, you really don't go and take those actions. Whereas that should be our normal thing, is we want to take care of the people that we know, and we want to meet more people to take care of, to look after and have look after us.
You're absolutely right.
But it's fleeting. It's fleeting during disaster of any kind.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And, it's sad because that is our tendency. And, I go through this even in the non-disaster stuff. We are given opportunities all the time where we could step out every day and help someone. And it's like, maybe I'll do that later. Send anybody else, not me.
Right.
Yeah, I want to help. I want to be, the hands and feet in the world. But, could you send somebody else to do that job?
Right.
And we were just talking about this a couple days ago. And it's like, it's so the pattern of humanity, it's like, we, for whatever reasons, multitudes of reasons, we've just been beat down. We're tired. We have it. I really do believe that we have it in our hearts that we want to help, but we want somebody else to do it first, or take the first step, or we want somebody else to show us first that they love us before we show somebody else that we love them.
Yeah, because we're afraid to be vulnerable and to put ourselves out there, because what if we get hurt?
Right. And what all of that shows me is that we are, again, all so starved for personal connection and people that care about us in our lives, and people for which that we can care on in our lives too. It's like, again, back to we think we're doing it through social media and because we're all so connected in that way, but that's not what connects the humans, man. We need one-on-one time with our peeps,
Yeah. So you're saying that posting pictures of our designer coffee isn't really bringing us together?
Well, not in the ways that we're talking about here.
Right. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your attitude on this. And I think that you're absolutely right. It's a tough thing. And the more people that wake up and start caring about what's important and less about, having the newest gadget or the nicest car, or, all these things that really in the greater scheme of things don't make a bit of difference. We'll get there. I think we used to be there. I think we can get there again, but it's going to take a long time and a lot of people really focusing and not getting discouraged.
Right. Well, and that's the hard thing too, is just the discouragement factor. It's difficult not to get discouraged, but life is worth the fight. It really is. That's, again, back to that's why I do what I do, because I love life so much. And what I mean by that is, like, I don't always love my life so much, but I love creation so much. When you can look outside and just be in nature and watch all the little animals and what they do, and have little animals in your house and watch the little things that they do, and just the nature of life in general, trees and flowers and even insects, man, they're not my favorite, but even with insects, it's just, I marvel at life and just how special it is and how we need to care for that better. We need, as humans, we need to be better stewards of our planet before it's too late. You know, I don't want to be like an alarmist or whatever, but there's just some next level stuff that, you know, if we don't take care of the life and the things that are right outside our door, they may not be there forever.
Well, that's very true. And especially, you know, people, we all have an expiration date. We don't know what it is, but
exactly.
It's going to happen. So enjoy what you have while you have it. Make sure that the people that you care about know that you care about them, and don't worry about the rejection. If there are people that are worth that care, then they're going to reciprocate.
Right. Exactly right.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just wise words to live by, my friend.
Well, thank you. I think that's a good note to end this marathon podcast on.
I know, right?
I will say thank you for putting the art out into the world that you do, and the good energy and the care and the love, because it does reach people. It does make a difference in people's lives. And, you know, whether one person listens to one of my podcasts or hears one of my songs or sees one of your paintings, if that one person is affected and touched, even if just for a minute, that's a minute that things are better. And the more minutes that we can gather, the better it gets. So thank you, Carla.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity and what you do, because I am not even kidding, dude. You are one of the most stellar human beings that I know. And I am so grateful to be able to call you my friend, because life is tough, and it's people like you that make the journey easier, you know, and better and more inspired.
Well, thank you. And I definitely feel the same way about you and Michael. And, you know, for those listening, Carla and Michael from a previous episode are married and great artists. They played in Element 115 together, and who knows what we're going to see them do in the future. I'm very excited about everything that's coming down the line. But thank you so much, Carla, for being a guest, for being a stellar, just amazing, beautiful human being. I have the utmost love and respect for you guys. And I'm so grateful that our paths crossed when they did.
I am too, my friend. I surely am. And I am grateful for you. So grateful for you. And thank you for this opportunity. Truly, I really am grateful. Thank you for always reaching out and, you know, having that attitude of how can I help you? Because, you know, you always seem to know the right thing to say at the right time. And I just love your willingness to help. And I am so grateful for you in my life.
Well, thank you. That means a lot to me. So you have a wonderful evening. Go get something to drink, because I'm sure your throat's probably a little bit worn from all the talking. And, come back and see us again.
I absolutely would love to do that. And I'm looking forward to the next time. And take care of yourself up there, because I know that it's hot and it's dry and woohoo, it's Vegas. Yeah,
well, the earthquakes will shake us, shake everything up if we get any more of those. It was a little crazy a couple weeks ago. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But thank you. And you guys stay, well, you're in a little higher elevation, but it can get pretty hot up there too. So hydrate. Yeah, we're pushing hundreds. Man, it's craziness. Well, thank you. All right, Carla. I love you, dude. Love you too. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Talk to you soon. You too. Bye. Yep, lots of work to be done, and it takes everybody to focus on making things better instead of bitching and complaining and yelling at each other and not listening. So let's just work on doing better. In the meantime, thank you for listening to episode 63. I will be back after the Labor Day holiday, with the exception of one random episode where I will be reviewing Audionamics' X-Tracks Stems 2. And you should check out their website, and also the podcast episode I did with Ellie from Audionamics, who's absolutely fantastic. Make sure that you leave your reviews, subscribe, like, all that good stuff. Tell your friends. And thank you guys for enjoying another episode of the HaskinCast Podcast.